Okay, so we are back for episode 3 of Cherry and Timber Talk, guys. Welcome back.
Hello.
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 So, we're coming back after a win of sorts with the master himself commenting on our YouTube video, which was exceptional. So, thank you, master, once again. Uh, and, we got a really good response on that video as well. So, yep. Let's not waste any more time and discuss what's in for today. So we did post our topic on Facebook and Twitter, and this is what we're going to talk about today. Test cricket's finest knocks from 2019, and I think it is a comparison of sorts, and we're not going to say which was better, but we're going to discuss this at length, and let's see what comes out of this discussion at the end of the show. Okay, so before we dig deep into the innings, it's important to understand what goes into making a great test innings. And these are some of the parameters that we as a panel discussed and thought we could bring about into this show. It's pretty simple, but it's also a great indicator in analyzing the innings in depth and understanding, what the player would have gone through and what was the match situation like. So simple pitch and weather conditions, quality of bowling, match situation, context of series, which is really important because that adds to the pressure component. Partnership batting in terms of, how do you shield the tail? Because in these two innings, that was an eerie similarity. Both were involved in a last wicket partnership. Current form and position in the game, which is also important because we'll discuss that later, how Ben Stokes was coming from a World Cup heroic knock and, he was star in the making for England. In fact, he was already a star. And whereas Kusal Perera was kind of, still there and thereabouts, if I could say that, in the context of Sri Lankan cricket. Home and away, that is also important. It adds to a completely different pressure altogether. Playing natural game or as per situation. I feel this is the most important aspect or important point that we'll bring out in this program, discussing both the innings, which is a very, very interesting aspect, which we'll bring it out in the next few slides. Luck factor. So generally, it's kind of a very strange thing to put that as a parameter, but in these two innings, a lot of similarities happened, which we'll discuss and which we'll see in terms of how that could have influenced the outcome of the game. So let's get going. Just a match summary for understanding what happened in these two innings. Again, Yogesh, you want to take through this?
Yeah, so I think with Kusal Perera, starting earlier in the year, 16th of February is when that match, I think, ended. Day 4, that was. So started on 13th of February. First test of the series on the South African soil, and a Sri Lankan team visiting to South Africa. And sort of, to get that kind of result was phenomenal for Sri Lankan cricket. Obviously, coming. So if you look at the first inning scores, Sri Lanka was behind South Africa. So it wasn't obviously imposing total to start off in the first innings, but South Africa did have an edge. They did try to consolidate in the second innings, and you'd see lovely knocks from Faf du Plessis in the second innings, and then Quinton de Kock in the first innings. So obviously they had an edge going into the fourth and the final innings of the test match. And Sri Lanka then had a task of scoring 300 plus runs. Now, looking at that Sri Lankan team, this wasn't the easiest of task, knowing also that, South Africa was fielding people like Steyn and Rabada and Keshav Maharaj. This wouldn't have been the easiest of chase for Sri Lanka. Obviously, we all know what happened in the match. Sri Lanka came from behind and actually won that match. We'll speak a lot about the contributors to those to that great victory in a bit. And the second match then, later part of the English summer, what all had we not seen until that point, at least on the English soil, you had the World Cup and you saw England and New Zealand battle out that legendary World Cup final. At the same time, Roger Federer and Djokovic had a different agenda to settle, and Wimbledon and Lords simultaneously we're seeing absolutely epic sporting action. And Ben Stokes obviously was a sort of singular enforcer of how that result would actually pan out for England in that match at Headingley. Now going into this match, Australia were already leading 1-0, and if England had lost this match, which looked like a likely outcome by then, this would have been curtains as far as the
Yeah,
Ashes Test series goes.
absolutely.
So, massive amount of pressure. Also, you notice that England were shot out for 67 runs. Some
Oh,
absolute brilliance by Josh Hazelwood there, and well supported by rest of the Aussie lineup. So England were really back to the walls at the end of first innings on both sides.
yep,
Australia posted competitive 246, I'd say, in the second innings. It wasn't a smallish total because they made England chase 358. Now, chasing
absolutely.
358, Ashes Test series on the line, and not pretty much to play with when Jack Leach came into bat. Speak a
Hmm.
lot more about that as we go. But the result, I think, in both cases was a heroic victory for respective countries. Thanks to Kosal and thanks to Ben Stokes.
Absolutely. So on that topic, Mahesh, Ben Stokes, it was a complete contrast, right, in terms of how he approached the innings in the first part and in the second part, right? You want to touch upon that?
See, Ben Stokes came into the Ashes with a lot of reputation, having single-handedly taken England to the World Cup finals and won them the trophy. There was a lot of reputation. Whereas if you look
Mm.
at Kushal Perera, I'm just digressing for a moment. Kushal Perera was making his comeback, okay, and this was only his second Test match. The only Test match that he had played before that was in Australia in Canberra, where he got hit on his head and he got concussions and all that things. So that was the difference between the two when they
Hmm.
came into their respective matches. Now, chasing this total, when Ben Stokes came to bat, even the World Cup finals, if you see, Ben Stokes plays according to the situation. Even in the World Cup finals, he took his time. Okay, once he gets a measure of the pitch, the weather conditions, and the opposition bowling, then he lets loose. And that's exactly what he did even in this Test match. His first 60 balls got him only 2 runs, which goes to show that A, the Australians were not giving him an inch, and
Yeah.
B, he had tons and tons of patience. And that's how a good Test innings is played. And I thought that that was very important because he got the measure of the weather, the pitch, the opposition, and once he got hold of everything, then he played a brilliant inning. Like what
Mm.
Yogesh said, both the innings were fantastic innings. It's very
Hmm.
difficult to choose which was better than the other. So
Yep,
everybody would have a preference probably,
yep.
but they were both fabulous innings. And in the end, I think the spectators got their money's worth. In England, it was a packed house.
Yep.
In South Africa, I think there was hardly any spectators to watch them.
Yeah. So, yep. Too bad to people who missed out on that beautiful knock
True.
by Kusal Perera. So, yeah. So now that we know the context of the game, the series, and a bit of background, so let's look at each individual inning. And again, the first picture that you see on your top left is something which happened when he just came to the crease on day four. Uh, there is some kind of eerie similarity in terms of how great batsmen get hit on the head in just before they play a great innings, right? I could remember fondly VVS Lakshman getting hit by Glenn McGrath in Sydney 2000 when he played at 167. Sehwag getting hit twice by Brett Lee in that MCG test where he scored 195. So there's something
Mm.
about getting hit on the head, right? It switches people
True.
on, and it always kind of brings the best out of people. So I think that's what probably champion people are made of, right? So it's definitely not easy, when you get hit on the body with a cricket ball that hard. It kind of softens people up, but some, like I said, great players completely different react differently to these kind of situations, right?
And I
So yeah,
think in that.
so yeah, Yogesh, you want to talk about this because this happened in England, so I'll give you the first go at Ben Stokes.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, at least in that summer, right, what havoc the short ball had actually created, and Steve Smith actually had to miss out a test match. And then we saw the first concussion sub coming in, and Labuschagne becoming the batsman that we all now know him
Yeah,
for the way he rose to the occasion. And actually, Australia actually found Marcus because of that bouncer, and how
yeah,
Steve Smith actually came crashing down.
yeah,
But hey, you know what? You lose some. I think from a temporary that test match point of view, but you gain some. And I think
yeah,
Australia actually gained a batsman because of that.
absolutely.
And just as you speak of this innings, right? He was softened up, and England were doing pretty well actually when he came in. England had
Yeah,
already scored about 140 for three when 141 for three when Ben Stokes came in, so they did have a reasonable chance. It's not that they were completely outplayed, but I think After he came into bat, and then he lost Bairstow, and then Butler to a run out, and then I think Chris Wokes eventually. Australia were actually bowling really well. They were not giving much to the Englishmen, as I think Mahesh also mentioned. Ben Stokes started sedately from 2 runs of 60 balls. Then he went on to score 9 runs of 90 balls. But then as he started losing partners, he also sensed that he'd have to take greater control over the proceedings, and then started playing more and more aggressively. Now, playing on day 4 against an attack comprising of Nathan Lyon is never an easy prospect with the Ashes series online. And we all know how consistent and how irritatingly persistent Nathan Lyon could be with his questioning. It's almost like, standing inside a sort of, victim's box, trying to defend your case against somebody like Nathan Lyon. And Ben Stokes actually showed how you can do that. And that was by just being patient initially. And then, when he had the opportunity and when he actually had to raise his game, he started attacking them. Not just Nathan Lyon, but also Josh Hazelwood, who pulled brilliantly in the first innings, had a good measure of him. And Cummins as well. So, yeah, I mean, overall, he showed just how you can adapt to different situations, different attacks, different tactics, and still could counter it all.
Absolutely. I think the important aspect to remember here, this was Australia, and this was the Ashes series on the line, and in front of a home crowd. Imagine the amount of pressure this guy had to go through, and and the way he changed his game, like Mahesh pointed out, right? And that's the reason why we have put out these slides in front of you, these images.
Yeah.
I mean, this shows the versatility of a man in terms of how he was batting before the last wicket partnership happened and how he changed his game. And I think, if I'm not wrong, they took about round about 11 overs to score those runs.
Around 10 overs, something.
Yeah.
10.2.
Yep, 10.2. Yep, exactly. It's about 76 runs in 10.2 overs, right? So this was like one day T20 mode on, right? So, and I was in complete awe of these shots that he played, which you see on screen. So the first one on top right is basically a reverse sweep, not even a switch hit. It's a reverse sweep, which went for 6 over sweeper cover of Nathan Lyon's bowling, which is so difficult to handle on a day 4 track in the 4th innings, right? And imagine the confidence with which he played the shot. And it was incredible to watch from this angle, right? If you see the video, I mean, the way he just timed the ball and just hit it, it was brute power and force as well as timing on display.
And Lyon bowls with pace.
Exactly.
So to be able to actually, switch and then sweep and then launch him into the stands is just phenomenal.
Yep. And
so
the one which, sorry, yep.
So while we've all been praising Ben Stokes' heroics,
Yep.
and there's no doubt about that, he's played a fabulous innings, and he single-handedly took England to a very memorable victory.
Yep.
I think Australia contributed to their own defeat. I think in the last 1 hour or so, if you see, they were not on the game. I mean, if you see, they were not attacking Leach as much as they should have, because they didn't give that much of opportunity to bowl at Leach. Leach batted only 17 balls out of probably 60 balls or 62 balls. That means he would have batted close to only 25% of the ball. The objective of the Australians should have been to try and give a single to Ben Stokes, if possible, in the first 2 or 3 balls. If they don't manage to do that, then they should have ensured that Ben Stokes remains at the other end. I don't think it was like that, because when Leach came out to bat, Ben Stokes said, we'll play the 5-1 game. I will bat for 5 balls. You will at best bat for 1 ball. And Australia actually helped them do that. So, okay, of course, the luck factor, like we'll always be discussing, was one of the reasons why Australia didn't pull it off. And I remember seeing some videos just after the match. The Australian media went around town saying that it was probably the worst umpiring that they had ever seen. The word that they used was disgraceful. I mean, let's not talk about the umpiring thing, because we all know umpires do make mistakes here and there. That's okay. But the fact of the matter is that the Australians, very surprisingly, was not on the game or not on the ball in the last 1 hour, and that actually contributed to their defeat.
Yeah, I think fair enough. It was definitely a tactical error, and I think this is something which even Justin Langer brought out vividly in his, post-match discussion.
Yes.
If you have seen the series on Amazon Prime, The
Yes.
Test, and I think that is where he was having a go at Tim Payne for sure, because it was a huge tactical mistake, right, in terms of not exposing the tail to your best bowlers, and giving out an easy single to Stokes to kind of change strike over, right?
Yeah.
And that's a gamble which you need to take as a team, right? You either take a 4 or a 6 of the last ball, or you get 6 balls at a tail ender, and that's what you aim for, right, in Test cricket to win games. So yeah,
And
good point.
I think
Leach scored only 1 run. That was the
Yeah,
last run that he scored to tie the game first,
the most
right?
important run that he scored
Correct.
in
Yeah.
the
So
context of
I,
the game.
I think
Yeah,
Aussies were taken a bit by surprise also.
yeah, yeah,
I honestly I don't think they'd probably imagined the scenario that they got themselves in.
yep,
And I think from the time Jack Leach actually walked into bat is when Ben Stokes actually started establishing full control over,
yes,
how he
yes,
was going to manage that chase. And then he wasn't sort of, I think he didn't let the pressure get to him. He said, there's only one way I'm going to be able to achieve this.
yep,
And by being aggressive and by being smart in terms of when can I rotate the strike, and so you'd have seen the way he hit Nathan Lyon for those sixes over long off,
yep,
right? And Nathan Lyon was shrewd enough. He tried to change the pace a bit. He tried to change the angle a bit, but Ben Stokes kept hitting him. And he just said, okay, fine, it's my talent against yours, and let's see who
yes,
wins.
yep,
And by that time, I think Australia had started panicking, because
yeah.
then you saw that you know things were going slightly out of control for Tim Payne. But for the first 30 or 40 runs of that partnership, I don't think Australia would have worried majorly.
yep, yep. I think in these situations, right, that's where this innings becomes even more critical, because the pace at which he scored, he absolutely did not give them time to think, right? Or
Yeah,
strategically
yeah,
have any specific plan B. It was
yeah,
happening so quickly, right? Everything was happening in
Yeah.
a jiffy. So there was
The
absolutely
game
no
moved
time
very
to have
fast.
exactly, right?
The game moved very fast. Yeah.
Which was again in the context of the innings and the parameters that we discussed, he did not give time to Australia to have a plan B or think
Yes.
about what to do now, right? It was so, I mean, the kind of counter attack, it was unimaginable, right? We saw 10 and a half overs or something to score those 76 runs. It all just finished off in a jiffy. So, yeah, so
yeah.
credit to them when Stokes for doing
The
that.
Australians were awestruck, I think.
Yeah, yep.
I think there's one point which I wanted to also make in
Mm-hmm.
terms of just the stamina. You see, when you talk of brilliant stroke play and aggression, all we also have to remember that matches are played under real world conditions. The
Yep,
sun was beating down, and if anybody knows something about English summers, 27 degrees feels like 35, 36, and Ben Stokes was sweating bucket loads, and
yep,
so much was actually being taken away from him. There's a mental resilience aspect to this entire thing. When the weather is taking so much out of you,
yep,
when the situation is demanding, he was still backing his skill, and he was still able to sort of clear those hits and get them over the ropes. Under normal circumstances, you might have seen somebody with lesser power and lesser
yep,
sort of stamina would have
yep.
actually holed out into the deep. But not
Absolutely.
Ben Stokes on the day. He just kept evading,
Yes,
marginally, but
yes.
still.
Yep. I think, yeah, he was dealing in boundaries, and which was a smarter thing to do as well, to conserve energy as well as get the maximum output, right? So, yeah, cool. So let's quickly move on to our man from Sri Lanka, Kusal Perera at Durban. Yep. So again, this was a phenomenal innings. There are some similarities here between the Ben Stokes innings and this one. Obviously, you see that he also played the reverse sweep to Keshav Maharaj. He also hit him out of the park by dancing down the track, and the way he cut the fast bowlers as well and pulled them, which was phenomenal. Right? It's not a natural thing to come to a Sri Lankan batsman to cut and pull so proficiently. So I
Yeah.
think this was something which he did with amazing intent as well as executed it to perfection. So yeah. So Mahesh, you want to add to that?
If somebody would ask who does he look like, I would say he looks like Sanat Jayasuriya. The way he was hitting the ball, if you
Yeah.
look the lifting of the bat, everything,
Yeah.
there is a small indication that it is Sanat Jayasuriya who's batting.
Yeah.
We know it's not Sanat Jayasuriya, but the kind of shots like the cut and the pull reminded you of Sanat Jayasuriya. There was savage power.
Yes.
He was he was ruthless. He was hitting the ball really hard.
Yeah.
And for somebody like what I mentioned earlier, coming back from in a kind of an injury and getting things under control, I think he played a brilliant innings.
Yes.
For me, the highlight was he was cool and calm, even in pressure situations.
Absolutely.
When the last batsman came into bat, that was Fernando, he did not bother to even actually give Fernando to bat even 3 or 4 balls. Maybe Fernando is a much more accomplished number 11 than Leach, probably. But maybe that's the way Kusal Perera approached that innings. He was cool. Even the last winning shot that Kusal Perera hit to third man, I thought he had complete control over the game. And that is something that I was really fascinated. I don't think Kusal Perera is ever going to play such an innings again in his life. But if he does it, it's going to be incredible. But all said and done, this was an innings of a lifetime. And I think if you compare it with Ben Stokes, like what you said, there's a lot of similarities in terms of the reverse sweep, the cut, the pull, hitting all bowlers. He had to contend with bowlers like Rabada and Dale Steyn, who we all know are quite a handful on any condition, and especially in South African conditions, they are very difficult to play. And his century becomes even more meaningful when you see that he scored it abroad, when he's played it outside the subcontinent. And that's the reason why I might be tempted to hold this innings slightly above Ben Stokes. Because he didn't come with any kind of reputation. You don't expect Kusal Perera to score 153 runs in a chase of 304. But you would expect somebody like Ben Stokes to score the runs, because to me or to a lot of cricket fans, Ben Stokes is a far more accomplished batsman than Kusal Perera. What Kusal Perera, punched above his weight, he made everybody believe. See, the match was a complete mismatch. If you see Sri Lanka and South Africa, and if you look at the team players, there is no way that Sri Lanka could have competed with South Africa. Add to it, they were playing in South Africa. That means there was a bigger disadvantage for Sri Lanka. Taking into account all these things, still if somebody comes out and plays such a fabulous innings, I think you need to stand up and salute that.
That too against the likes of Steyn and Rabada. It's a pity that Philander could not bowl the last day.
The critics will always tell that had Philander been there, but then you never know. So there was a chance of a run out, just like what had happened in England versus Australia match. But all in all, I think Kusal Perera played a fabulous innings.
I think the major difference, which I could say, like you have already pointed out, the calmness, in which Kusal Perera played between this and Ben Stokes. We are looking for similarities also, but the difference could be that he was very calculative in his approach compared to Ben Stokes, who was, really using brute power. But here, I saw him, being very, very calculative in terms of choosing the right ball to hit.
I think Yogesh had mentioned it earlier in the pre-show that he played only in one gear. Kusal Perera just kept hitting from the first ball, whereas Ben Stokes actually spent a lot of time in the middle, 60 balls to score 2 runs, and then his strike rate improved. Whereas Kusal Perera, it did not matter whether he was batting with the number 6 and number 7 or number 11. He was going hammer and tongs. So that is definitely a difference. So that is why I believe that it is difficult for Kusal Perera to score another brilliant innings like this, because he is a batsman who takes a fair amount of risk. He loves to play his shots. And I don't think the situation actually bothers him too much. He just goes out and expresses himself. I think that's the difference between the two.
Interesting.
One thing which I will sort of point out here is the pitch at Headingley, right? There were 3 or 4 other batsmen who got started or had settled down to score runs. As against at Durban, if you saw what was happening on day 4, the ball was swinging and the ball was turning. Keshav Maharaj had got 2 wickets in consecutive balls. But I think
in consecutive balls.
Consecutive balls. So I think there was an element of defeating spin on day 4 track, and there was an element of dealing with Steyn and Rabada on a swinging track. And I think that's what Kusal Perera actually did really well. So I think his mode of attacking Keshav Maharaj by using that switch hit, switch sweep, or something of
It
sorts,
was actually a reverse sweep. Yeah,
reverse
similar
sweep,
to
yeah,
what Ben
reverse
Stokes
sweep,
did. Yeah.
similar to Ben Stokes. And then, once he got them out of the attack, then the way he hit Rabada
Yeah.
behind square,
Yeah.
and the shot that will probably remain etched in my mind is the way he slogged Dale Steyn into the
Over mid
mid-wicket
wicket.
boundary.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a solid statement. Now, to do that to a Dale Steyn actually needs a lot of courage.
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
and I felt, if there was a definitive sort of image from that innings, that shot would probably be that
Yep.
I think, he was dealing with probably slightly more difficult pitch conditions as well on the day.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yep.
Yogesh, it was alien conditions for him any which ways, because he must have been bred on probably the
Turning
low,
tracks and yeah, lower
Subcontinent
the
bounce.
tracks.
Yep.
low, yeah, subcontinent wicket. So based on that, I think it was a very, very impressive innings by Kusal Perera.
Great. So let's look at something which is quite interesting, the luck factor. Again, generally, in our discussion, we generally don't bring out this topic when it comes to analyzing an innings per se. But here, why I wanted to bring this out is because of the fact that there were so many similarities in the way things folded out, right, in these two innings. So the one for Kusal Perera at Durban, the top image which you see is 34 runs to win. I think Fernando had edged it to second slip, which fell short. And Pereira tried to steal a single there, which was great thinking. And it was a risk worth taking because of the fact that there was nobody backing up on the non-striker end. And again, this resulted in 5 overthrows, which was a crucial factor in terms of, 5 crucial runs
Yeah,
in that context is huge, right? So that was one.
weight of gold.
Absolutely. A similar thing happened, but at a much, much later stage when Nathan Lyon fumbled that ball when it was 2 runs to win. And trust me, in all my years of watching cricket and following cricket, I've never seen an Australian team or an Australian fielder crumble under pressure like that. That was a first for me. And that too, expecting it from Nathan Lyon, I feel he's headstrong and he's mentally very tough, right? So it was quite a surprise. So yeah, and I think there were a couple of other incidents, which is the one which was on with Fernando. The ball missed the edge, the ball missed the stumps by a whisker, right? When you saw the replay, it was unbelievable to watch in terms of how did that miss both the edge as well as the stumps, right? The off stump. So
I think it took away the coat of paint from the stump.
yep, yep. The catch, the drop catch of Ben Stokes, Marcus Harris, I would probably say that was a 50-50 chance. It was
50,
it was a very
correct.
difficult chance.
True.
I mean, to be fair on him, it was again a very difficult chance to take. But yeah, the DRS is something which comes into picture and brings in a very interesting debate. Should Tim Payne have taken that or not, or would it have affected the game? Yogesh, your thoughts?
I think you're referring to when Jack Leach was on strike and Tim Payne
Yes.
actually took the DRS,
Yeah.
that decision.
Yeah.
I think Tim Payne was absolutely justified in taking that one
Hmm.
because they were so close. And if Tim Payne had not taken that DRS, he would have been questioned again as to why not. Imagine if that ball was actually to go on to hit the stumps, right? So I think it was
Hmm.
justified. And also then you contrast it to the DRS that they could have taken, but they did not have that, which was when Ben Stokes was playing.
Hmm.
Look, in that case, I found probably to the naked eye,
Hmm.
you would have to be really, really, really brave to give that out. I don't know
Hmm.
why DRS suggested that the ball had sort of deviated that much to be able to hit the stumps. To the
Hmm.
naked eye, with the kind of pace Nathan Lyon was bowling, I
Hmm.
thought that ball was only going one way, skidding
Hmm.
probably down the leg side, or
Hmm.
even if it was to hit the leg stump, right?
Hmm. It was a touch
um,
and
in
go
a
decision. Yeah.
situation
Yeah.
in a situation like that,
Hmm.
the umpire will not give that because the benefit
Hmm.
of doubt does go to
Hmm.
the batsman. um,
Hmm.
and it's great, technology offers you an opportunity to correct some of these things, but I feel Australia were justified in taking the DRS when they had to. And
Hmm.
second, I feel if they were to take the DRS, or they were to have the
Hmm.
DRS probably would have come under question again.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. So I just had one. I completely agree on the second one about Ben Stokes when he was sweeping, Nathan Lyon, which is fine, right? That was a 50-50 touch and go decision. Yeah. But in terms of Tim Payne taking the first one, I'm still a little unsure whether to call it a mistake or no, because I'll tell you what, when it happens in real time, And
Yeah,
as
yeah,
a
yeah.
keeper standing behind the stumps, that far behind the stumps, he was kind of unsighted because it was a very full delivery. It wasn't a length delivery or something like that. So he may not have understood where it pitched, whether it was outside leg or whether it was in line of the stumps or not. But then, yeah, it's like you said, it happens in the heat of the moment. It happens with everybody. These kind of decisions are always hard to make.
And
So yeah.
then how would Tim
So
Payne would be to know that something like that would happen later, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's hindsight is a wonderful thing, right? So that's
Exactly.
something which we all can debate out.
So
So great.
my observation on that LBW decision is that he should not have taken the review, because to get an LBW when a bowler is bowling from right arm over the wicket to a left-handed batsman, it needs to straighten up probably after only when it
Yeah.
has to pitch in line.
Agreed.
And and probably the bowlers would have been in perfect position to realize that it had not pitched.
Yeah.
So unless the bowler was so sure that it had pitched, that means the bowler needs to be given a kick.
I think,
Thought,
I think people were pointing out fingers on Tim Payne, but I would suggest that the bowler also
correct.
equally responsible.
I don't think the wicket keeper would have been able to sight the
Yeah.
place where the ball would have pitched, because
Yeah.
he was standing at a different angle, and from that angle, it's almost impossible for somebody to know whether the ball would have pitched on the stump or not, or outside the leg stump. But I think the bowler had a bigger role to play, and I have seen for a fact that most bowlers believe that every ball that they bowl, that they have got an LBW decision. So don't always trust the bowler.
Cool, guys. So great. So your closing remarks, Yogesh?
I think just on this debate of which knock was better, I probably think the better question is how good were these two knocks? Not which one was better.
Absolutely.
Just that.
Yep. Makes sense. Mahesh?
I would, since the whole show is to figure out which is a better knock, I'll put my neck on the chopping block and say, I think Kusal Perera's innings was a better one, only because he went and played in South Africa, which is completely alien conditions for him.
Absolutely. Yeah, makes sense. If you ask me, again, I'm a bit in between when it comes to judging which was better. But then what I'm happy about is the fact that these two knocks has brought about a completely new, different perspective to fourth inning chases. And, it's kind of, making a point that nothing is impossible.
Oh, yeah.
And, fourth inning chases above 300 are possible in today's day and age. And you could still play test cricket by playing in T20 or one day mode and as per situation, right? And you could still win games. So yeah, so that's a completely different perspective, which I thought was brought about from these two innings. So yeah, my personal favorite, difficult to, choose from the two innings. Both were equally good, like I said. I tend to lean towards Mahesh's assessment. Yes, Kusal Perera, foreign conditions. But again, I also tend to lean towards Ben Stokes when it comes to home conditions, Ashes series on the line, pressure, crowd, everything into context, right? So yeah, so we should be happy that we got to witness these two exceptional innings, right?
Why don't we speak to somebody from one of these countries and get their opinion as well?
Absolutely. Let's be back with a special guest. Okay, guys. So welcome back again. So we have a very special guest. We have Tryshan on board with us, and he's a Sri Lankan living in London, right?
Yes.
Great. So Tryshan, great to have you on board. And as you know, this show is about discussing two really good test innings from 2019. One is a man from your country, Kusal Perera, 153 at Durban versus Ben Stokes, 135 at Headingley. So yeah, personally, I would want to put you on a spot and ask you which one was your favorite out of these two.
Yeah, obviously. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. And it's a privilege to be part of any discussion relating to these two innings, both of them phenomenal innings. I'd say both of them deserve the same credit, but for obvious reasons, I'm Sri Lankan and I'm biased to obviously think Kusal is the better one out of the two innings. But yes, but if you do dig into the stats and everything that was happening around it, I would personally feel that Kusal's innings was slightly better than Stokes'.
Can you give us a little more perspective on Kusal Perera as a person, as a cricketer? I mean, you would have followed him, right?
Yes. Coming into the national side at the beginning of his career, he was known to be the basher and the batsman who would play very rationally. But over the years, we've seen him mature a lot. And at first, nobody thought that he would become a Test cricketer. He was pinned down to be an ODI and T20 batsman, but he has matured a lot, and he has shown a lot of intelligent batting decisions through of his career.
Interesting. Mahesh, you had a question for Tryshan?
How important this innings will be from Kusal Perera to actually take Sri Lankan cricket forward? I'm sure that you will also agree with me that Sri Lankan cricket is not where it was probably about 5 or 7 years back when Mahila and Sangakkara were playing. Now it's a completely revamped Sri Lankan team. So what kind of a role does Kusal Perera play from here on?
Absolutely, Mahesh. Sri Lanka has not been playing good cricket. In fact, I'd say they are at all-time low at the moment, if you will. After losing big names like Mahela, Sangha, like Ranganihera, Murli. But yes, we are in a rebuilding phase, and I think Kusal has a very big role, including other players like Dimuk Karunaratne, Angelo Matthews. They would be the core members of building this Sri Lankan side to a better standard and being more competitive with the bigger nations. So Kusal has a big role to play in all formats. He's a good wicketkeeper as well, so he brings in another aspect to it. He's got a lot of experience now. He's been around in the squad quite a while, so I think he'll have a very crucial role in revamping the Sri Lankan side.
Cool. So
does he,
sorry, go ahead, Mahesh. You had something else to ask.
Does he remind you of Sanath Jayasuriya?
Absolutely, but I'd say Sanath is in a different league, obviously.
Oh yes.
But yes, he's the next best thing we have to Sanath.
Okay, so we'll wrap up with one final question with Yogesh.
Yeah, I mean, Tryshan, I'd want you to go back to the day when Kusal Perera actually played that innings. Did you see it live, and what did you feel when that was happening and when you were watching it?
Absolutely, I was watching it live as always. I'm a lover of Test cricket, so I tend to follow pretty much every Test game played by Sri Lanka. So as always, with the all-time low that I mentioned before, there's always less hope in a situation like that, especially when you're 5 wickets down with I think there was about close to 200 runs to be scored.
Yeah,
5 down to the target. So there wasn't much hope. It was all South Africa at that point. And I think the only other contribution Kusal had was 48 runs by Dhananjay De Silva. Other than that, nobody else got into 20 at least. So yeah, there was no hope. But with every over, with every progression, he started to show a lot of responsibility and control over his innings and control over the non-striker. So he was handling it very well. So as the game went on, belief was building.
Yep, it would have been a nail-biting finish for you guys, right? In terms of how close it got in the end. Yep. So
yeah, I mean, you're down to 9 wickets, and especially the last 4 batsmen we had, they were not guys that could wield a bat, and especially the last man, Tryshan Fernando. He's very new in his career, and he's had very less exposure, especially to the likes of bowlers like Dale Steyn and Kagi Surabada. They're one of the best bowlers out there. And so I think Vishwa did an amazing job at 11th batsman. If you rate the top 10 11th players, Vishwa would be at the top of it, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a compliment to Jack Leach, I suppose.
Yeah. A lot of competition with Jack Leach. They're at the top, I'd say.
Yeah, great. So wonderful, Tryshan. I mean, it was amazing to have you on board here and get your thoughts as well. And we would love you and your cricketing fraternity to follow our shows as well. And
Absolutely.
feel free to write in and feel free to participate in more of our social media campaigns as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tryshan.
Thank you, Tryshan.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. So we will be wrapping up this show, and we'll be back with a bang next week again. And watch out for our social media handles once again for the next topic. And see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.